Hey, Chris Bedan here. Today I wanted to show you my attempt of the one stock challenge, the semi one stock challenge, using Ableton Live and the One Kit Wonder Modern Fusion Pack from GetGood Drums. Okay, so the reason why I called it the semi-stock challenge was because today I'm using the One Kit Wonder drum pack, the Modern Fusion drum pack by GetGood Drums, which this thing is, wow. They get better and better every time they come out with a drum pack, which is, I mean, good for us, right? I just remember always struggling with getting good drum sounds and everything like that, and with this one, it's, I mean, I don't really have to do anything, and you'll be able to see here. The reason why I wanted to attempt this stock challenge was to kind of prove to myself and to everyone out there that you don't need much you don't need to do much with the One Kit Wonder to get good drum sounds and to get a good mix. And I wanted to take it one step further by using the stock guitar amp and cab simulators by Ableton Live, as well as the bass cab and amp simulators. And I also did the synths using the stock sounds with Ableton as well. Like, Ableton is no slouch when it comes to any of these things, but let me go step by step and just kind of show you the different things that I did with the drums, but also the guitars, the bass, and everything like that. I'll show you what I did with my master bus and everything. Now, I guess this kind of goes without saying, but this is not, I'm not trying to show you that this is the way to mix or anything like that, or, this is the end-all be-all way to do it, or I'm a master of doing this. I've just been doing it for so long that these are kind of the way, this is the way that I go about doing things. Usually now, it changes all the time just because I'm learning new things, but I mix strictly by ear. These moves that I make are just by listening and throwing things on just to remove things that I don't like, or boost things that I want more of. And usually that question comes to mind of like, well, how do you know what to boost and cut? Well, listen to your favorite songs in your headphones or your monitors, and just listen to as much music as you can through them. So then when you go off and mix your music, you're gonna know the difference. So let's dive in. Okay, so first thing, we got the EQ on here. This is similar to the EQ that Nolly has been putting on his mixes, his top-down. He talks about top-down mixing a lot, but this is kind of just to boost some low ends and the high end, trying to get that high end and low end sheen right off the bat, Next we have the glue compressor, I believe this is. Yep, and I just did catch peaks just so I can catch the peaks. One thing that I noticed by not being able to get my tracks as loud as other people's masters is because of all those initial transients that just hit so hard. Like, one of my biggest struggles has always been the snare, and I think that's everyone else's, but so I put this on there to kind of catch the end of what I've already did on the drum track and the guitar track and all that, and I'll show you that later. But that's what this is. And I think it's going at about, 5, -5, let's see here. Yeah, so it's like maybe -3 or 4. It's not doing much. It's just catching those initial transients to allow more headroom so I can boost it, you know, I can boost up those levels. Next I have the multiband compression. It's a multiband dynamics plugin, but I actually use the multiband compression preset. I've been using this for a while. I mean, I can't really tell you everything that it does, but I know that it just sounds, there's a world of difference with and without it. For me, it's another, you know, what I'm hearing is another way to kind of tame some things, to be able to boost the volume. And lastly, I have kind of like a saturator. This is the saturator plugin here, or a tape saturation. This is the saturator plugin, and I just did hot tubes and I dialed it in by ear using the wet dry knob. I also mess with the drive a little bit here. Again, not much, but it's adding to their overall sound here. And then I just added a limiter with a semi-low ceiling, -2. This is kind of one that I've been taught to kind of stick around. But I boosted the gain until I was about, I don't know, -5 or so. I try not to go more than that, just because then I start to hear it, you know, I start to hear it limiting and stuff like that. So that's the master bus there. Okay, next let's start with the drums. We're gonna start with the drum bus first, and you can see not much, just multi-band dynamics, and I did my own little tweaks here, again to tame the peaks, tame those initial hits so it's not like clipping or anything like that. So let's hear what that sounds like. Semi-noticeable difference there, just mainly in the high end. You can hear that it kind of shaves off those initial transients again, like I was saying earlier. All right, here's the kick. We got the kick here. Just EQ, just little things that I did to kind of blend it into the mix a little bit more. But I guess what I can do now is kind of show you what I did inside the actual plugin, the One Kit Wonder plugin. Now, they kept this a little minimal for a reason, because they were trying to gear this more towards, you know, songwriting and getting to the initial reason why, you know, you're doing this is to create the song, you know, is to start writing, but also have great sounding drums as fast as possible. And so you can see I left things fairly the same, brought down the snare a little bit, brought the overheads up just a little bit. But if you go in here into the balance little buttons here, you can see that you have access to, you know, change a few things in here. You know, they didn't completely dial it back. They still gave you the option to, you know, adjust things within each of these mics, which is awesome. So you can see I brought a little bit out of the overheads in the room with the kick. With the snare, same thing. Not as much as the kick, but I added a little bit of reverb there. The toms, didn't do much with the toms. Didn't really need to do much with the toms. Overheads, I brought the hi-hat down. Just personal preference. I like the hi-hat to be a little bit more balanced. Now with this song in the beginning, it's pretty heavy, but in that particular song, the Deftones song, you can just hear it like it's trying to be in your face, and so I just left it. Turned the cymbals down a little bit, as well as the ride. No reverb. In the rooms, got the hi-hat, ride, cymbals, fairly the same, just kind of brought down, all, you know, uniform. And so that's really all I did in here. I have the CPU scaling on high, but I also brought the buffer rate up When I'm recording, I record it on low, like when I'm playing keyboard drums. I'll keep it low, just so I have no latency or anything like that. And I mean, as you know, these are the drums that you get, which I think all of them sound super great. I didn't use the parallel EQ or the parallel compression or the master EQ on this one. I did a comparison and I just didn't need it. And I think on here, yeah, I didn't use any of the velocity curve on this one as well. I didn't really need it. You know that I'm notorious for really using that, and I would say experiment with that as much as you can, because that is sometimes your issue with your drums sounding not realistic and realistic. Another reason is the velocities, but velocity curve definitely has a little bit to do with it as well, in my opinion. Okay, next is the snare. You can see I didn't do much. Glue compressor, and just did my own little tweaks here. I tried to not make the attack as fast as I can because I still wanted a little bit of that initial transient to come through. But I didn't want it to be so overbearing that, again, it messes with the noise floor in the headroom of my master bus. And I made the release a little bit longer just so I can get that, what's the word I'm looking for, just to let the snare breathe for a little bit longer. Kept the ratio the same, threshold, not that high. We can kind of see what it does here in a second, but you can see with the EQ, I boosted 200. That's the low end of the snare. That gives that nice like fat drum sound, fat snare drum sound. And so I lifted that, as well as at about 6K, I did a little bit of like a high shelf, just to get more of that snap. And so for this song, I wanted the snare to blend in a little bit more. I tried to get as close to the actual song as I could, and it seems like it's blended in pretty well, just for Chino to be able to, shine a little bit. So that's all I did on the snare. Okay, so the toms, you can see I didn't do anything to them because they didn't really need anything done. And again, that was kind of the goal with One Kit Wonder, was to have great sounding drums right off the bat. So, if I didn't need to do anything, I didn't want to, I have things that I like to do, typical things that I like to do when I mix drums and stuff like that, but I didn't need to here. And so I just left it alone. For the overheads, kind of the same thing as the snare, just a little bit of initial EQ to tame things and remove things that I didn't want. You can see low end cut here, and then I got rid of a little bit of 500. 500 is notorious for just having unwanted frequencies that just kind of mess with your mix, and so anytime that I can just get rid of a little bit, I'll do it. And then we got a little bit of glue compressor again. You can see I made the attack a little bit faster so I can get rid of those initial transients of the cymbals. It seemed like the cymbals just wanted to be heard on this. And so I didn't want that. I wanted it to blend in. And so that's why I did that. But I wanted it to have enough time to kind of like get that sustain of those cymbals to kind of ring out real nice. So that's why I kept that release kind of high. And then you can see where I put my threshold there. I can show you what those toms sound like too, going into that. So you can see the toms aren't that loud, but I did that for a reason. I didn't want them to be overpowered. I thought about, well, what if a singer's on here, this and that. I tried to mix for a singer, but also, again, I tried to compare my mix to the actual song. And so that's why, I made these decisions. And so that's all I did with the overheads. Next we have the rooms, and again, didn't do much. I know, usually people will smash these and stuff like that, and I'm definitely known to do that. But again, for this one, I wanted to do as minimal as I could. And so I just did a little bit of a 500 cut. It seems like a little bit wider spread, you can see there. So that's really it for the drums. Okay, so for the guitars, it got a little weird. When I say weird, I've never done anything like this before. I've never really tried to use Ableton Live's amp and cab simulators, just because I've always had, I've had the Axe effects for a while. I got the bias effects stuff, and now I have the neural DSP stuff, which I love. It sounds so great. But again, I wanted to make the attempt to see what I could do. And so this is what the bus channel looks like here. And the way that I bus it was just put it in a group, and then put my effects that I wanted to affect both of them at the same time here. And I like doing that with my guitars, just to kind of like blend them in together a little bit more, so they're not as they don't sound like two different things. They're kind of like one cohesive thing, but it just sounds like a stereo, like big stereo sound, So you can see I brought down that 3 to 4K range, and that's known to be where the crispy end of guitar is, so I've learned. And this was something I had to learn over time, and it was so hard for me in the beginning. But bringing that down and having that kind of curve like that, it just blends it into the mix so well. And then I use the guitar control dynamics with the glue compressor. It's here. Where is it at? Here it is. And, tweaked if I needed to and stuff like that. But again, I didn't want any of those peaks to kind of really shine too much, because I wanted it to blend in the mix. And so that's why I used this and, made those tweaks. So you can see adding those two plugins really just tames it and just brings it in. So again, it'll blend better in the mix. Okay, so for guitar left and right, this is where I did quite a bit of experimenting. You can see I kept the tuner on there. So this is the heavy amp sim, and let me see if I can find it here. So this is located in Audio Effects, Amp, and there is a heavy setting, and so I just brought that in, and then I found a cab because they have. Okay, so what I just realized was there's another reason why I called it semi stock challenge, was because I actually used the Cabzilla on here, and I believe, I don't remember the preset that I used on here. I want to say that it is maybe Heavy Perfection, I want to say I used. I didn't really mess with the settings at all. And then I put on a little drive here, which is just like an overdrive pedal. So I actually used the pedal, and then I used little drive, and then I tweaked accordingly. Overdrive setting, gain all the way, output, and then you can see kind of the difference that it made there. Just kind of, I don't know, for some reason for me, it kind of like made it sound a little bit more realistic. Without this pedal, it just seems super fuzzy. You can hear it. Yeah, I did a little bit of EQing here, but not much. You can see, and it's pretty low, but you can tell that it does quite a bit to that sound. So next I put EQ in. You can see I actually boosted a little bit here. A little bit of that. I didn't really boost it that much. It looks like I actually did more of a cut at 500. With the Deftones guitars, I realized that they have kind of a unique tendency to them. They have a unique tone and everything. I guess it's the way that Steph and Terry and Chino wanted them to sound, you know, and so I tried to get that as close as I could. And so I have this here, and then this is just a little gate that it's called shortcut. Here, it's actually a setting. And you can see here that I just tweak this accordingly, essentially. But let me show you what this EQ sound like. Yeah, probably just to blend it in a little bit better, you know. And so you can see that I did the same thing on this side, pretty much the exact same thing, just to get that stereo wideness. Double track guitars, you can see here, 2 different performances to get that wide sound. And then you can see here that I panned them hard left and hard right. So with the 2 different performances, they're going to be different, you know, each time that you perform it. And so that's what causes Dick to kind of get that stereo width. So you definitely want to do that. Some people do quad tracking and stuff like that, so like 2 on each side. I've tried it and I didn't really like it, so I've stick to, you know, the holy grail, this. Okay, for the bass, it got a little weird, just because the bass on this song is so unique, and it's, you know, if you don't get that right, then it just doesn't sit right, you know, in the mix. And I definitely had a hard time. You can tell that it's not the best sounding, but it still, you know, got the job done. And so on the bass bus, the bass group, basically, I started off with a little bit of EQ here, and again, this is kind of me messing with it as I'm, you know, listening. And so you can see these types of moves that I made here. I move this a lot. I've been adjusting this. I actually adjust this a little bit before I started this video, just because, I mean, there's a sweet spot for sure, but, you know, it's definitely personal preference. And then I did a little bit of multi-band dynamics, just so I can compress, you know, the highs, the mids, and the lows. But that high, it's really pointy because of the way that, you know, the bass sounds. And you can see here that I actually have the bass DI and a bass copy, and I'll get into why I did that. But let's see what that sounds like with that multi-band dynamics. So same reason why I always use multi-band dynamics is to tame things, is to tame that high end and just really keep it tame so it doesn't overload my compressor, which I have next. You can see here the glue compressor on the bass preset punch and parallel. You can see that there's a preset here in the glue compressor, the bass parallel and punch, and then I dialed it in 0 attack because I didn't want any of those transients to poke out, because this is already so pokey, which you can hear. The reason why I have 2 different bass channels is because of that really fuzzy channel, the fuzzy tone of that bass tone. I actually wanted to be able to control that as well as my low end, so my low end doesn't get too muddy and lost in that fuzz. And so what I did was I made a fuzzy track and then just a straight bass track, and then group them, and then, you know, compress them to blend them together. And so you can hear what this one sounds like. And then I'll show you what this one sounds like here. So a lot of that bass attack and stuff like that, like I realize it likes to come from this actual bass track here. And so, I left it alone as much as I could and then took a lot of it out. Here I got weird, you could tell. I got really weird. But let's go through this fuzzy track first. So this is it's called bass roundup, but it's actually, I think what I did was I changed it to this lead preset so I can get that super fuzz sound. So this is actually like a Mesa cab or a Mesa amp. And so you can see here my settings. Added a limiter right away so I can cut off those initial transients because I just wanted that fuzzy sound, Let me show you what that did. So you can hear those peaks. That would really mess up my compressor, and I think that's why I did that, because I was just struggling to, and you can see I smash it again here, I was struggling to just get that to sound decent or to blend with my other tone. So you can see with the EQ here I got real weird, but this is how I eliminated all that bass so I can just focus on that fuzz, because I still wanted to keep the performance, but I just wanted that high-end fuzz, and so that's why I did that here. And then you can see I did some additional things here to kind of shape again. There's nothing wrong with stacking EQs if you're trying to do two different things, and for me I was like, okay, I want to get rid of all this stuff and get rid of this and then do a little bit of stuff here. So that's why I did that. Overdrive, you can see I did a little bit of automation on here. It wasn't much, but I think what I tried to do was to use as much fuzz as I could in the intro of the song and then have it blend a little bit more once everything kicks in. And so that's why you see that there. But this is just a little overdrive, she's not much. And then multi-band dynamics to shave off all those things that I don't want. You can see, let me show you what that does. So it's super aggressive and I just tamed it. Let me show you what these EQs did as well. So everything you kind of see just kind of serves a purpose. This one heavily serves a purpose for sure. But then I can show you what this overdrive does as well. So you can hear it was a little thin without it. And so adding that overdrive really helped just kind of thicken it up a little bit, but thicken it up in a without introducing, the sub lows and stuff like that. On this one, you can see I actually kept the bass roundup. It's an actual bass cab here, and then I did my settings, adjusted accordingly. And this one, it looks like I actually used the cabinet, the actual cabinet here. I didn't use GetGood drums, Cabzilla. And so that was just this, and then I think I used like the 4x10, yeah. And then limiter right after, just to kind of cut these things and just make sure that my bass stays consistent. And so here you can see, got a little weird with the EQ, just to shape it so I can blend it with this. Usually when I do these types of EQ moves, I usually let the whole song play and then I'll adjust accordingly. Or maybe in this case what I did was I just let the blend play and then adjust accordingly. And so you can hear what that does on here. So you can see it just got rid of the boxiness and stuff like that, the things that I didn't want. And usually you'll see the same type of EQ curve in a lot of my mixes with the bass, you know, just to get a little bit fatter sound and stuff like that, but also to tame that. The bass I have is not the best. It's a super cheap bass, but you know, it's all I have, so I'll just make do with it. And this is what I have to do. So multi-band dynamics at the end just to tame all those things, show you what it does. You can just hear like those overbearing frequencies that are just trying to just be heard, and I was like, no. And so that's why, you know, I just adjust these here, and then you can adjust the volume just by clicking in here and going up and down. And so that's how I achieve that bass sound there. Now I'm sure I could probably get it to sound way better, and you know, if I spent a lot more time on this, but I just wanted to see what I could do, you know, with this, and get as close as I could to that sound that they have on that song. Okay, so this is the swell that's at the beginning. It's kind of like a feedback type thing. You see I did a little bit of automation, but the way that I went about creating this was, I had to bounce it a few times just to kind of get the final tone that I wanted. But I actually used operator, and I believe that I used like some sort of lead sound or something like that. And I found the same note of that feedback sound, and then I did some tweaking to get it to kind of like have that overdrive sound and feedback sound. So I put an overdrive on there using, you know, the plugins here, and just got it to sound like that. And then I had to look up a tutorial on how to get it to kind of get that, you can hear it here, let me show you. And so you can hear it kind of get that. And I looked up the tutorial how to do that just because I never had to do that before. I never really did it before. So I looked up the tutorial on how to do that. And then because I didn't want, because it was introducing some sort of like weird volume change, you can see here, it introduced some sort of weird volume change. So that's why I had to adjust, because without this, it just got really loud all of a sudden. So that's why I had to do this crazy automation change. And also, I'm going to put this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change these cabs, these cabs here into actual cabs on here. So anyone who wants to check out this, I'm going to make this available for download on my Gumroad and my Patreon page. Finally getting my Patreon page going, but I'll put this on my Gumroad for $1. So if you want to go through and, you know, see exactly what I did, or use this for your own things. The other cool thing about this is everything is already routed. If you wanted to do multi-outs for One Kit Wonder, and so like I said, I'll make that available. For this pre-chorus synth, that's actually this synth here. Just blends in with the mix. I'll show you with the mix. There was just a little bit of the sweetness that Frank, you know, loves to put in these songs, which I think plays a huge role in, you know, their sound, in my opinion. But so with this one, I believe this is operator. So it looks like this is actually the analog preset here. And you can see saw 3 muted pad. And I just did my own tweaking here. I brought the attack down a little bit more so it just hits right away. Not as much release And so that's how I got this sound here. Again, not much, and I could have probably done more. I could have probably added, you know, a reverb or delay, but just didn't. I wanted to stick to the minimum here. Okay, so the final thing that I wanted to show you was the effects I have going on. You can see in my return channels here. The way that you go about creating these is you just go to create, insert return track. You can't see it just because of the way that I have this recording. I'm screen recording, but that's how you do it. Then I have this reverb here. This is actually my snare reverb. You can see I kind of got a little weird. I was doing a little bit of experimenting, but I can show you what it sounds like. And so it's not that high in the mix, but it definitely gives the snare a little bit of that room sound, you know. And so you can see here, I actually use this to boost it a little bit more, just so I can have it interact with my compressor. And I added the initial reverb. I turned off the spin and the chorus, but you can see my decay time here. I have it here, and I have it all the way wet because then I adjust it here. But I also will adjust it here, but you can see I have it pinned. So again, I can have it interact with this compressor so I can tame those initial transients, just so it's not messing again with my headroom here. You can see here I did a little bit of EQ curve, not too much. And then this is something that I've been experimenting with for a little while. When I was a part of this mixing, you get a mix a month type of thing. They actually did Carnival, and it was Deadman, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's what it was that they did. But anyways, the first thing that I did was I went through all their stems and was just looking, I was listening for, you know, how they went about recording things. And one thing that blew my mind was they recorded the drums and the bass at the exact same time in the same room. And so when you listen to the drum room mics, you can hear the bass in there. I was like, oh, okay. And so I took it one step further and I kind of put everything, a little bit of everything in there. You can see with the returns, this is return A and this is return B. You can see here it says A and B, and right here. And you can see on each channel it has A, B, A, B, A, B. And so you can blend a little bit of each of these tracks into here. Now for me, since I grouped all these things, you can see that I just blended my groups. And they're pretty smashed, but what I did is I made like a faux room track, or faux room reverb return. And so this is actually a reverb preset. If you go into reverbs, you will be able to see that it's just wooden room. And I put that in there, and then I got rid of the spin and the chorus. And then I brought up the decay a little bit, just a tiny bit, just to give that, again, that room sound. And then I did a glue compressor to tame anything that got weird. But you can hear what it sounds like. So it's like a little layer of just sound, but it sounds like it's in a room. And so I think I've seen a few people do this, but I've been experimenting with doing it myself and trying to find the right blend and stuff like that. And it's something that I'm still messing with to this day, but I just seem, what I hear is it just fills it in real nice, and it just adds to that blend, you know. And adding the saturated to the master track really enhances that as well. So that little room reverb trick is money. It's money. So that's basically everything that I did to achieve this sound with all the stock plugins, apart from a few. Thank you, GetGood Drums, for being so awesome and making great products for all of us to use at an affordable price. I think that's what I love about GetGood Drums the most. Like, they can easily compete with anything that's out there right now that's, you know, pretty high dollar and is in the forefront, but they're doing it at a fraction of the cost, and it sounds just as good and, in my opinion, a little bit better. So I would definitely check out, if you haven't already, the GetGood Drum stuff. This One Kit Wonder is super affordable, and it sounds, in my opinion, it's one of their best sounding ones, with minimal effort. So I would say check that out. And also, like I said, I'll make this available on my Gumroad for $1. But if you join my Patreon, which there'll be a few tiers, I'm still kind of working out the kinks with Patreon. I'm new to it, but you'll be able to download all the things that I'll be putting out, all the future videos, different projects I'll be putting out, my groove packs, stuff like that. So thank you guys for spending, you know, your time with me. And if you have any more questions, just hit me up on my Instagram at chris.bedan. But other than that, thank you guys again, and have a great day. See ya.